Okay, so to begin, we'll have some discussion on a new athletic training facility.
Bryce, yeah, is that you? And I would,
Both of us.
come on up and why don't you
Moving
just
on
kind of
up.
stand in the middle here.
What if I'm shy?
It's too late. And as Shelby indicated, it's hard to hear when there's multiple people talking, so we'll try not to talk over the top of each other.
Yeah, this concept, I just wanted to be clear that this concept's been around probably before COVID. We had an idea with one of our longtime coaches that this is something we wanted to do, and then COVID came and wrecked it, delayed it a couple of years. It never really got off the ground, and then we were going to do it again, and he retired, so we paused it, brought it back. He got cancer, paused it, now he passed away, we brought it back. So this concept, Bryce and I and the previous coach have been thinking of something like this for years. COVID really brought it to our attention that that place, that Champion Training Center that's now 20 years old, is just way, way too small for the number of athletes that we are currently using and the community request for that. So.
First off, I'm Bryce Veneri. I think I've met all of you at some point or the other. I'm the football coach here. This facility, when you think about it, so I worked with Coach Bratt for 12 years. I played for him for 2 years. And of all those 14 years we were together, he always talked about space, space, space. Early in my career was a little bit better. As my career went on and more sports grew and our sport grew and sports got a little bit more specialized, the space got even smaller. And so as we go through this process of, and again, this is my first time ever doing this. It's my first time on a big project like this. But as you look at this project and the benefits of it, it's not just going to benefit Butler football. It's going to benefit every single sport. It's going to benefit our college. It's going to benefit the county, the area. It's going to benefit everybody within an hour of here because of what this facility could do. If you think about it, like the Stryker complex in Wichita, the benefits of that, how much it's grown in 10 years. That is kind of kind of what we want to do. Obviously, we want to honor Coach Brad, who dedicated 43 years of his life to this place, and the amount of people that he touched and all those things. But just going through the concept of it, of what we want to do, obviously a large overtaking of an indoor football facility. Another facility that will benefit our other sports and activities to have adequate areas to train, adequate areas to rehab, adequate areas to do all those things, and all do it at the same time. During COVID, when COVID struck and we went away and then we came back, that facility was used from 5 a.m. to midnight every single day for the first 7 months we were back here. And you had to be in there, and then there had to be a 30-minute buffer zone to clean and do all these things. And as you look at this facility we could build now, every team could practice within 2 hours and be done for the entire day. Now, this is not a project that we're taking very lightly. This is, again, we're still in the early stages of this, but we thought it was important that we get it in front of you just to show the benefits of what this facility could do, not just for the sport that I coach, but for everybody at this school, everybody in this county, in this area. High school teams, junior high teams. It would be as you go down. There would be a storm shelter for the campus. It would be a FEMA building to be able to do that. We've even gone down the roads of making it as self-sufficient as we could with alternative electric options and all those things. So that's kind of the overview of what we want to do. Any specifics? I really don't have a whole lot of specific numbers on anything like that, but the overhaul of what it is that.
Tell them just a little bit about the fundraising piece of it, even though, again, you don't know numbers. This is just sort of a, kind of a dream concept at this point in time, but there are opportunities, yes. Significant opportunities that, you're personally aware of that there are former players of Steve's that are very interested in trying to help.
So we've had an initial conversation with some people about that. And they have expressed a lot of interest in this, and that's why it's really ramped up over the last couple months. Obviously with Coach Bratt's passing and all that, we were able to have them all in one spot, and we could talk to them. And there are a lot of people very, very interested and intrigued in this project to do, because again, it's going to honor somebody who did so much, not just for the football team. I mean, he did so much for a lot of people, and they want to be a part of that. So there will be a handful of privately funded dollars for this. Like you said, how much we don't know yet, but we've had those initial conversations, and we have a bunch of people's ear as of now.
We hope to do it all privately. That's our goal right now, of course.
And that's kind of what I've challenged them to do,
Yes.
is to do it privately.
Yes.
But we felt like it was important for you just to at least know that it's being talked about, and that they want to continue to explore this, and that we'll keep you engaged as we go along. Certainly the commitment of some lead donors with some lead gifts will help identify the size and the scope of the project and the cost of the project, or whether it can even be done.
Yeah.
So, just wanted to give you a heads up.
Just, are you kind of thinking of someplace like down at OSU, like kind of a big football-sized building,
Oh yeah. It'll be a giant football building that people will see for miles.
like, well, and very similar to Aviate Wichita, where it,
Yeah.
I mean, there they have sand volleyball, basketball, baseball, kind of all under one roof. Are you kind of thinking about
So we're
something
thinking
like that?
we're thinking of a full, an indoor football facility, and then if you can imagine over there behind our facility, those tennis courts, building a building back there for kind of every other sport, and like he likes to put it, they're like, think about horse stalls for horses. There would be one, a basketball court, a volleyball court, and then the indoor turf that we have now, it would almost triple in size for baseball and softball. We'd have a track in the inside to go around to where everybody could practice at the same time if we absolutely needed to. There would be no issues. We wouldn't have to. We will still wake our kids up because it's good to wake them up in the early mornings. But we wouldn't have to work from, they wouldn't have to make a schedule from 5 a.m. to 10:30 or midnight just to get our teams in to work out or practice or rehab or whatever it is.
Lifting weights, whatever.
Yeah.
And you could do it all with one facility rather than going down to football field and practice.
Yes.
So we'll keep you posted, okay? If you have questions that you think about afterwards, email me. I'll get them to athletics. But again, it's just kind of concept. It's a dream right now, but those dreams need to come so you at least know that we're talking about them.
It'll set Butler apart from everybody else, I promise you that.
Well, and
Thank you.
other community colleges are building facilities at this time.
Yes, they are.
I mean, Hutchinson is,
Iowa Western's got a nice one.
yeah.
Very aware.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have an insurance discussion with Shelley.
Okay, you're gonna have to
Hi.
speak up.
Got it.
You're gonna have to have a Kim Kroll voice, something.
Alright. I'll try to get my best stage projection out here.
Yeah, Shelby, if you can't hear her, speak up, okay?
Okay, so as I had talked about with you all last couple of months about our insurance for coming up 24-25 year. Our renewal has been presented by IMA. You got to hear some of that logic behind what we are doing, what we're looking at for the next year, and a little bit about where the projections came in. We were looking at primarily around the 10.4% increase overall in premium, which is actually a little bit under trend, so much better than last year for sure. And so I've been doing a little bit of work with trying to identify the contribution of the college as that would look for the increase in the cost, and the contribution for the employees, and trying to keep those as low as possible for the employee side. They had a pretty big bump last year in their premiums, and so really trying to balance that out. So some of the work that I've done will define how we move forward, but also the amount of spend that the college will make on behalf of the associates and all the employees. So our original budget ask was $450,000, and our actual renewal costs came in somewhere around $652,000. So I have kind of made some adjustments to what I think were some of those projections, and feel like we can fund this properly with the $450,000 of the college, which was the original ask, which was about 8.4% of the costs that we put at the beginning. So today I'm looking for some kind of affirmation or some kind of acknowledgement that those costs would be absorbed by the college. This is a negotiation topic as well, so when we go into our negotiations with the faculty, they will be talking to us about what they want the college to pay and what we are suggesting or recommending by the board. So currently, the way I have the premium structured, the college would be able to stay within that $450,000, maybe a little less, and the employees would have about an $84,000 increase collectively. Last year, that's very similar. I think last year they had to do this jump from like they were paying $56,000 a month to paying about $75,000 a month. So there was a big jump last year as compared to prior years. Oh, the $75,000 is a month. I'm sorry. Over the year, it's an $83,000 increase to them, and a little over $380,000 to the college. We do think that we will have some additional rebates from the RX side. I have underfunded a little bit of what the claims that IMA thinks that we're going to have come forward. I have underfunded those a little bit to keep those costs down for both the college and that. We have a very healthy account balance that if we should have some additional unexpected expenses that they could be funded within our $1.5 million that were originally invested. So some of the other particulars about our plan and some of the renewals I can give you. Currently, our claims are running about 80% of expected. So when we budgeted for this year, we budgeted at 100% of what they told us would be 100% expected. We always try to budget at least expected. Not at what's least expected, but at expected. What is expected? A lot of plans, like if you are fully insured, want you to budget at max expectations, which is 120% of whatever they think your claims values are going to be. So with IMA, we've elected to stay at the expected line and not the max, because there's a big difference in 100% and 120% claim value. This year, we're coming in at only 80% of that 100%. So we're doing really good this year, which means we'll have a surplus from our budget this year into our balance of that 1.5. We'll be up around 1.8 to potentially 2. Everybody say yay? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we have so far received about $415,000 in rebates on our pharmaceuticals, which is good. That's money that comes directly back into our plan. Our budget is estimated to be running about $573,000 in the surplus for this year. If things kind of stay at that 80 to 83% mark of expected, we'll have over $500,000 that'll be added to our reserve that as a result of not spending as much as we had budgeted. We do have 16 members that are above the 50% stop loss deductible. And we have 5 members that have exceeded the 75 K stop loss deductible. So those 21 members are about 35 to 40% of our spend. Keep in mind that there's several high cost claimants. It's not the plan overall. And all of those members are currently active. So that means that they foresee those continuing to be high cost claimants. Okay. All right, so I've kind of given you the big picture summary. And so what we have to do moving forward is our open enrollment starts early August, like August, the first week of August. So we have to know our rates pretty quickly, like in July, so that we can load them all into the systems and people all enroll online. We don't do anything on paper anymore. And so we have to have that all loaded into the system up in the backside and into the payroll, so when deductions are ready to begin. And this all takes time and it's processed. And then we have meetings with the employees and they determine what they're gonna sign up for based on how much it costs for one. And so that happens the first week in August. So not only do I have to understand that the budget will allow me to do as I need to do, but also I have to make sure that I can get it ratified by the faculty. So that all has to take place in July. And so that's why I'm here talking to you today to say I can stay within this budget, maybe even a little lower. I feel like I still maintain an 86-14% split. It's still pretty close to that between what the college pays and what the employee will pay. So that didn't really change a whole lot. We did make some plan changes that I think will benefit the employees that perform the service. So I'm glad about that we could lower some of the co-pays in that without a lot of additional expense. And potentially offer some other types of changes. But those all have to be nailed down for open enrollment also, so we're still working on those. So I'm asking what questions you have, or what additional information you'd like to have from me, because it's quite possible in July I'm gonna bring you an MOU of some kind that says this has been ratified by the board, or sorry, by the faculty, and that we would like to move forward with that so that we can have this ready for open enrollment.
We did that last year, if you remember right. We ended up doing an MOU with the faculty because we hadn't completed negotiations yet. But that was the one piece that we, had to agree on because had to, get into open enrollment and have people be able to have their health insurance within the window that we had, so.
That was a huge increase last year, if you remember.
Shelley,
Yes,
do you believe that the 86-14 split is common?
it is for Butler. And that's overall for the plan. That's not, if I look at the individual plans, some of them, let's see, we're paying 85%, some were paying 81%, some were paying 83%, some were paying 85%, some 94%. Just depends on which plan they're in as to what percent and how many people are enrolled, obviously, in each of those. It's like employee plus one single and family, and then we have 3 tiers. One's like a lower deductible, a middle deductible, and a high deductible. So it just depends on which one you're in and what your costs are lower if you're in the higher deductible plan than the lower. So it's just, it's a balancing act for sure, but overall for the plan, when I first got here, the plan was paying 92%. So we have made some movement on it to get that balance at a little bit better. And we keep kind of moving it a little at a time. Last year it was 13% that the employee was paying. This year it's gonna be 14%. It's not something that you can make a big leap because it just makes it unaffordable for them to acquire that much of the increase all at once. So we just kind of keep moving a little bit at a time. Obviously, it depends on what the plan is, but usually on a single, it's usually a 70-30 split. On a family, it might be more like a 40-60. So it just kind of depends on the industry, but I think we paid more than our fair share mostly on this than any other industry I've been in. But it goes up every year, so it's an incurring cost that is always going to increase what we pay. So the budget I'm going to be looking at for at expected on claims, or just actually a little bit under. I'm expecting to run about my projected 95% of expected is a total annual cost of $7,102,468. That's compared to this last year, which we budgeted at $6,450,195. So, whereas like I said before, that's about $652,000 increase. Last year we had a 1.14 million increase, so it's a better, it looks better this year. And hopefully it'll continue. Yes.
Shelley, as we go along, I think I understood the IMA people. If we continue to where our claims are at 80% and we keep putting more money away in the plan as we gain years in self-employment, that'll kind of help us, won't it? Or self-funding, won't that kind of help us a little bit in determining maybe some options?
Yes, and it certainly is something that I took into consideration when setting the rates for this year. So instead of going to fund a full $652,000, I'm only going to fund about $456,000. So because I know that we're going to have rebates, I know that we're going to have additional surplus coming into the plan from this year, so that if we did have a bad year, we have one that isn't like the last two have been, and we've been coming in under expected, then we've got enough cushion in the plan to be able to cover those.
And this covers faculty, staff, admin, full-time.
Yeah, full-time, yeah, correct. We have about 381 employees that are enrolled in the plan. Out of a
Would one become
possible,
full-time employee?
out of a possible about 476 that are possible that could be covered, 381 are.
And then how many family members? I mean,
There's about 880 total members in the plan.
Shelley, when you talk about the 600,000 or so increase from last year, is that the portion that Butler paid, or does that include part of what our stop loss carrier would have also picked up?
That was an increase in admin costs, stop loss insurance, and what they expected our claims to rise to. So it's all three of those.
And then have we had any preliminary discussions or anything that we've got from the association that would, you seem optimistic that we could have an MOU done in less than a month? I've seen nothing in negotiations with the association over the last 2 years that would give me any optimism that they would agree to something.
Well, they
so
did. They did agree last year on the MOU we had for insurance, because it was really important to them that, if they didn't do it, they were going to have to pay a lot more money than
So
they
we would have
should.
just carved them out of the plan.
They would have had
as of August?
they would have had to pay, they would only get what the college was paying from the prior year.
Okay.
They would have got that, but the college actually contributed, like in one category, $200 more a month towards the premium. So they would have had to pay that,
Okay.
which would have made it basically
So
unaffordable.
their contribution rates would stay locked in under the
Right.
current contract.
Correct.
until- Okay.
Correct, that is correct. So, honestly, I think this is gonna be ratifiable, by both, the board and the faculty, because I really tried hard to keep the rates down for them. And so the increases are pretty minimal on a monthly basis.
Okay, so I have that the difference in premiums would have been $652. You think you can reduce it down to $456? Out there, $454. And our part of the new pay would be,
Our part, new pay would be $372,000.
well, let me.
That's an estimate. Yeah.
So the difference between the 600,000 and the 400,000 is gonna be, I mean, we're still paying for it because we're gonna use the money that we get back in our
Yes,
I got it.
correct,
pharmacy rebates and money that we already have in reserve in that self-funded
Correct.
fund to cover it. It's not
Instead
that
of
they're,
putting it back into the
It's-
reserve.
yeah,
or
it's not,
leaving it in
yeah,
reserve.
it's not gonna be that the overall cost is reduced, it's just that we have some pharmacy rebates that will help cover that cost and have some money in that self-insurance fund that will cover that.
we get in some offsets.
Yeah.
And then the employees pick up about $83,000.
Yeah, if you think back to the original budget requests, we had in there for next year's budget 470,000, is that right? 450,000 that we wanted to increase the budget to cover health insurance. That's not changing, we're not asking for any more than that at this point in time. We're gonna use the rebates and the, money that's in that self-insured fund to cover any difference beyond that 450,000.
So are we going to offer a $500 deductible option?
I have that in my pocket, so we need it for negotiations.
Well, it seems that I'm not gonna say gloss over this, but I want to give a perspective that right now, we are paying $21,000, almost $22,000 a year for an employee's family plan. So we've heard so much this last year about how we don't do anything. That's a lot of money. That's half a
Absolutely.
salary in some cases. So I just want to make that point because it is a lot of money. And it's going to be more if we do this. So.
And when you put together the compensation letters, when HR puts together the compensation letters, you include that health insurance amount on that compensation letter so they see their annual salary as well as the health insurance contribution that they're getting from the college to get the total picture.
And this is for every employee every year.
This is Shelby. I had one quick comment.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, after this last year of the professional union pretty much bad-mouthing the board and doing all the stuff on campus, kind of confusing students, to put it politely, I'm not feeling especially generous in a lot of this stuff. That's just my 2 cents. I don't really appreciate how we were treated this entire last year. I'm not feeling reciprocal, I guess, on wanting us to spend a lot of money.
I think their issues were very specific last year, and not that those won't come forward again. But this is typical of our negotiations, as far as what we negotiate, compensation, which includes insurance. So that's not new to us. The last year, I'm gonna tell you, I think was an exception. I don't think that we usually have that type of behavior from the professional employees, and it's not all of them, it's a select smaller group of them. So I really hate to lump them all together as one bad unit, because I simply don't think that's the case. And I know it may look that way because you're hearing from some of the people who want to be adversarial to us, who want to play the union game. And that's not representative of the entire faculty body. I truly believe that.
No, I understand that. It's just when that happens on campus in front of all our students and creates all the confusion, I don't think it's super helpful for Butler as a community.
I understand. It's a political thing. It's
Right, and it should affect their negotiations this year if they're so hostile to us last year with such an amazing package that I thought we offered. And I think the way we were treated should affect how we at least start out negotiations, not that we're going to end up where we start out.
Okay, other comments or questions?
Just one follow-up, Shelley, here. I don't disagree that the outspoken people aren't necessarily representative of the entire group, but they were led by the elected officials of the association. So it's, at some point, the group is, the face of the group is the people they elect to be the heads, and when they're the ones out there engaging in the behavior they were engaging in, it reflects on the entire group, whether they like it or not.
I understand. But I also think about, there's a lot last year going on with companies and strikes, and you look at the big corporations that had hundreds of thousands of people on strike, and there was a lot of activity going on like that. And I think that the KNEA, Kansas Negotiation Association, they came in with that motivator too. That they really were gonna try and get this due process solidified in all school contracts. And I think that was a part of that push. And it was just like these other, we were just hearing so much about labor and those type of things that were going on. I think that everything was kind of caught up in those momentums. But
Is a memorandum of understanding limited to just the financial aspect? Or can there be something written in there saying that, if the same shenanigans occur, that we can take this off the table?
well, they have a legal right to some of those shenanigans.
I understand they have legal rights, but, and maybe it's not something that's written, maybe it's an understanding, an informal understanding that
It's very difficult.
we need to keep it professional.
And I agree with that 100%. And to them, they may have thought they were acting professionally and under their rights under the law. They were, burning flags or anything crazy like that. But, yes, it was irritating. Yes, it was difficult to deal with. And they don't want to do it again, I believe. They would prefer to be able to get what they want and not have to push the union card or union tactics or strategies, whatever you want to call them, like they have. So I'm hopeful that we'll.
This is Shelby. I had one more little comment. I would like to see maybe going forward to, provide raises and incentives and all that. We do need to, at the same time, curb our expenses and not continually, or somewhere we need to make some trimming so we can pay our teachers more. And I don't see how we can continue just to increase everywhere while generating less revenue. I know the option's on the table for raising taxes, which I won't support, but I would like to, give increases while balancing it with expense cuts.
There's lots of things that are going up all the time, our expenses, so. And labor and dollars is one of them. The balance.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Shelley.
thanks, Shelley.
Move on to our final topic, which is the budget with Kent.
I think I'm gonna move up and Carrie are gonna pass out the presentation here. Also, I believe Jennifer just emailed this to all the trustees just a few minutes ago. So Shelby, I don't know if you have the ability to see that and open it. But you,
I'm currently driving, so I cannot look at it. I did ask Jennifer last Thursday if we could have maybe received it earlier before the meeting.
I didn't get it done.
I'll do my best to. I got you. I'll do my best to just listen, and I can watch the video later. Thank you.
I will attest to the fact that Kent was up here yesterday afternoon, working on it and working this morning on it, because I was up here as well, not working on the budget, I was working on some other stuff, but
Yeah.
this just came together today.
Yeah, thanks. So Shelby, at least you'll have it tonight in a PDF form. You can go back and look at it if you have questions. So,
Thank you.
talk about a few things. There's 3 sections in the information that I've passed out. There's the operating budget, there's a timeline in the R&R considerations. And I put in here the deferred maintenance, which is the last 3 pages of the document. I don't think I'll spend time on that really. This was in your board book last month, and we just, you know, in VP meetings, we talk about this a lot. We want to include it because it's sort of a reminder of a large outstanding obligation that we have to maintain this campus. And so we don't want to lose track of it. So I just want to include it kind of as a memory jogger on these last 3 pages. So let me share my screen here, I think. And what I want to talk about now is sort of the middle section. You see pages that are labeled R&R 1, 2, and 3. I want to go through these. There's a timeline. Make sure you can see that, it's pretty small. But you do have it in front of you. Shelby's driving, so you can't see it anyway. But the budget pretty much comes to a head here in the next 3 months. So at the July meeting, July 9th, we will give you an update on how we finished the year as far as the unencumbered cash, the revenues over and under. And then we will also ask you to approve the notice to exceed the R&R. It has to be done at that meeting. If it doesn't pass at that meeting, then the timeline is different. There's a note at the bottom of this page. If you don't pass the notice of intent to exceed the R&R at the July 9th meeting, then you would not be able to exceed the R&R, and you would have to have a work session or a special board meeting towards the end of July. Could be at July 22nd when we have the board work session, or it could be after that. But you would have to, at that time, pass the notice of public hearing. That's the old format. So we will ask you to approve the notice to exceed the R&R at the July meeting. And the next page is that, and I'll get to that in a second. Assuming that you pass it, then the real next step is at the August 13th board meeting. That's when you would need to pass the notice of public hearing. And then it's a combined notice for the public hearing and the R&R hearing. They're basically one hearing, but they're 2 separate statutes, so you have to identify by both of those names, public hearing and R&R hearing. That's when we show you the legal budget and all the documentation that goes with that. Then at the September meeting, that's when you'd hold a public hearing and approve the resolution of R&R to exceed the R&R and approve the legal and operating budget. If you don't pass the notice of intent July 9, then August 13th meeting would be the public hearing. We revert back to the old statute on that.
Can I interject for just a
Yes,
second?
certainly.
So for Aaron, the intent to, the notice of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral, if you pass that, essentially gives, it's not that you are making the decision to actually exceed the revenue neutral, but the intent says that you might, the board might, but it gives you a little bit more time and weeks to consider the budget, to assess the situations that we're in, a little bit more time for review. And I think that's confusing sometimes for people because they think when you pass the intent, you're actually saying we're going to exceed the revenue neutral, but you have flexibility and you can still come into one of those next hearing and not exceed it. That's what you decide to do, but it really gives institutions or taxing entities the opportunity to kind of review the budget a little bit longer.
It sets the maximum.
Yeah.
Sets, can't exceed that.
So the revenue neutral is the amount of money we collect, not the mill levy.
No, actually, the revenue neutral is a mill levy. That's the way the statute
The way the
reads.
statute reads, but I'm just saying, you can see on that next page, that to keep the revenue neutral, we have to drop the mill levy. That's
6 cents.
6 cents.
Actually, if you drop down 2 pages, it's a notice of intent. This is what we will ask you to approve next month. The amount of taxes we levied last year with that valuation came to 12.268 or 269. There's a rounding there. We're asking for the 1 million increase. And so, yeah, that's what we're gonna ask you to do on July 11th, the July board meeting. Then back up here to the second page, I want to show you, this is a document we get from the county clerk. That up on the screen there. The actual valuation says total there, and it's it's bolded. It's 1,097,589,556. I'm not used to reading numbers with billion in it, but it's almost 1.1 billion. That number itself is about maybe a 5 or 6% increase over last year. But there are some things we have to take into account. This handwritten numbers in the top right-hand corner, pending exemptions. When we actually put the valuation on the legal budget document, we will subtract these off because we don't expect to collect those. There's also a number down here in the lower left-hand corner. The tip numbers, 8,919,000. That number, less than 170,000 above that, is also money we don't expect to collect. So we'll subtract that from the 1.1 billion before we actually get the valuation that we use to calculate the mill levy and the amount of taxes. And then there's another number clear at the bottom, 332,000, which are pending exemption, and the county clerk says we probably should not include those in the valuation that we think we'll have collections on. So this has become more complicated in the past few years. When I first took over, it was a little more simple. And but I will check with the county, the finance director at the county, because our valuation is the same as theirs. So I want our legal budget to show the same valuation that their legal budget shows.
Kent, on the pending exemption, why will they be subtracted off?
When will they be subtracted?
Why?
Because we don't expect to collect those,
Because
because they're pending. And they're pending exemptions, and the theory is they're probably gonna be exempt, they're just pending right now. This is what the county clerk advised, and this is the way the county prepared their valuation last year, I know, because I followed their lead.
Exemptions can be given for up to 10 years. So, however, if not all the criteria is followed, there could be an exemption that comes off. But like one of the new things, and we saw the documentation come through here when City of Augusta wants to create an RHID district. Well, there's no houses there. What we're giving up is future, at the time they pass that and they build the house, you're giving up a certain length of time of tax. So when you appraise the house, it says worth $100,000, but you don't really collect that for 10 years because you're using the money to pay for infrastructure improvements or something like that. Then, but, you know, if they wouldn't follow the criteria for some reason, it could come back on. So when I look at this document, you know, I've said this all along, you have this increased valuation, well, you can look here and see that new improvements, you know, over the last year made up $18,590,151 in assessed valuation. So some of those are going to be exempted. I mean, because the city or the county or someone has granted that exemption, and normally we've seen it, and we don't object to them, because it's money we won't have if they don't build the project.
Kind of like a miniature star bond.
Yes.
Eventually you see it, eventually you get it once the exemption expires, but yeah.
Up into the 5 years, the 10 years, whatever it is, once the bonds are paid off for infrastructure.
Valuation, you know, it's set by the county, but it fluctuates, it changes, there's a number of things that change it, but not terribly significantly. I mean, it's pretty much what we can count on. Any other questions on that? Move on more to the operating budget. And I'd like to go back to page 4 here. It says OB4, operating budget 4. And this is just a summary of where we think we are this year. We gave you an update in April here. And I just want to, we have a couple of, well, really one major change that we know of, and it's in the revenues. So you can see the operating revenues that we showed you in April, almost 54 million. We're reducing that in the current year, that estimate by 535,000. And it's detailed on the next page. It's really in the current taxes. So when we set the mill levy in September, when you vote on the mill levy in September, then the county actually firms that up over the next month or two, and we get notice from the county, I think in November, of what it is. They send out the taxes. They start collecting them in January. Normally, we get about 94, maybe a little over 94% of what we levy in that 6-month period. That's what we call the current ad valorem taxes. And then the line below that you see is taxes in process. What we don't receive in that first 6 months of the, say, the 23 taxes that were levied last year, we received 90-some% of them January to June of this year. In the next 6 months, we'll continue to get some of that, and it goes in what they call taxes in process. Well, we had anticipated in the budget getting closer to 95% of collection in this 6-month period. For some reason, it came in lower. It's only a little over 92%. So I'm anticipating that we'll have more in the taxes in process next year. I don't think we're losing all of this 386,000 that shows on line 14 there. I think a good portion of that will come in as taxes in process next year, but it does reduce the revenue in this year. Also, the delinquent taxes came in $65,000 less than we thought. And as Mary Martha pointed out, we talked about that in Finance Committee before the regular board meeting, and she reiterated that to you, that the motor vehicle tax came in $86,000 less this year than anticipated, out of $1.3 million. So that, you know, it's 6% or something like that. That's a pretty good amount.
Find those tags in Oklahoma.
Very unusual. Could be, we don't know.
It sure is.
So that's really the only change. And the next page is this is a summary of the changes that were made that we showed you this in April. So on line 15 says that was the update in April. We don't know of any significant changes to the budget, current year budget this year. We'll wait and see. We budgeted to come in, we've anticipated underspending the budget by about $2.6 million based on our history. It's very important to us that that's close. So we should know that by the July 11th meeting, July 9th meeting, when we bring this back to you. So, unless there are questions on that, we go back to page 1 here, OB1. And this is a summary of the recommended budget for next year. And the first row of numbers there is the budget numbers that we showed you. No, excuse me. That's the 24 budget that we looked at back on OB6 or OB4. Just brought up here to show you the increases or decreases for next year's budget. So in the revenues, we're anticipating $380,000 more next year than this year. You go down through here, skip down to the next page, the OB2. You see in the student sources, there's just a small decrease there. We're basically anticipating no change from this year. And the 27,000 is actually the $1 reduction in the rate for in-district students that was passed back in March. We've known for some time that we will receive less money from the state. That's based mostly on past enrollment decreases or the 3-year rolling average in their calculation. We are to receive some extra state money, but not to the operating budget. It's money like deferred maintenance that will go over into our designated reserves. So with the increase in valuation and the 1 mill levy that we are anticipating, that we've recommended, we are going to receive approximately $793,000. We anticipate that more than the current year. The current year is down, obviously, $300,000 from what we were anticipating when we showed you this in April. Taxes in process, I've increased that some because we do think we'll get some more of the 23 taxes in the taxes in process. I would hope it would even be more than that. That's kind of a conservative estimate.
What is that?
Okay, so again, that's what I was explaining. This would be taxes that were levied last approved by us in September, levied by the county in November or December, supposedly paid the first half. Maybe there's second half taxes, and that it's something that we don't get until after July 1. Really, the second half taxes we usually receive, most of it in June. But we received a lower percentage this year than we normally do. So we always get some taxes in process. I'm hoping that it's up next year to make up for some of the current year taxes that we didn't get this year.
So where we pay our taxes on December, or by December 20th, or by May 20th, then it usually takes 30 to 60 days for us to get that portion of that tax that's owed by people, whether they pay their taxes all at one time in December or December, May?
Well, there are, we get a tax distribution in early to mid-June, right? Carrie?
Yeah, June sixth.
June 6th. And so they will do a cutoff at some point in time, that'd be at the treasurer's office, and whatever they have for us at that cutoff, that's what they send us. There could continue to be taxes come in.
Yeah,
So do they just
Delinquent
cut us
taxes.
a check
Well,
twice a year?
There's a difference between taxes in process and delinquent taxes. They can still get it timely, and we get a portion of it next year. That's what they call taxes in process. Happens every year. Then if they don't get it in timely, then it becomes delinquent. That's the third category that we have here. We have current taxes, tax in process, and delinquent taxes.
Ken, how often does the county remit taxes to us?
Carrie?
So I think it's September, October, December. is when-
And then June.
And then January, March, June.
Oh, okay.
But we get two big ones, December and June. But like the motor vehicle tax and some other things, they spread that out a little more. Okay. So that's our revenues. Our expenditures for next year's budget are on OB3. We showed you these. We start with the base budget from last year. We have this list of additions and reductions. Again, we showed you these in April. It came down to a net increase of $538,000. There's only really two changes since April. As we told you last month, the property taxes, we had, not property taxes, property insurance, property and liability insurance. We had anticipated needing an additional $170,000 for that. It came in just $2,000 over last year. So we can take $168,000 out of the budget, which is a good thing because the athletic insurance came in at $61,000 more than anticipated. So there's a $107,000 decrease there. So this is the new number that we will be, at this point, we anticipate asking you to approve as the operating budget, expenditure budget for next year. So let's sort of recap mostly of what we've shown you in the past. One thing that we want to do, over on page OB7, this is a graphic of our unencumbered cash compared to our 10.5% goal. So, if you would go back to like OB1, down at the bottom of the page, it shows you what we anticipate the unencumbered cash to be at the end of 2025, and it's like almost 7 million, 6,979,000 in the operating budget. And the 10.5% of expenditures is 6.1 million. So we're still above the 10.5% target by 866,000. So the way that shows up on this graph here is right here at 25. I don't know if you can see what I'm showing that on the screen, but there's a gap that shows the red line, which is the expected unencumbered cash above our targeted line. But if we extend that on out and we take some basic assumptions that are listed up above, and we just talked about these in our BP meeting, and we've assumed a 2% enrollment, 2% increase in student revenue. So that would be a combination of either raising tuition or having increased enrollment. And so we get 2% of growth in student revenue. We don't feel that it's prudent to anticipate any state growth. We think we're probably going to be lucky if it doesn't decrease. So we've set these assumptions at 0 increased revenue from the state. We're anticipating a 5% valuation increase, and we built in the 1 mill increase for 2025. We've not put any change in the mill 26 or 27. We think it's important, administratively, our team thinks it's very important to plan for at least modest raises, and health insurance is undoubtedly going to go up. So we've built into this model a 3% salary increase for the next 3 years and approximately a 10% increase in health insurance. Now, there's a number of other variables that can come into play. This is very bare bones. We haven't put anything in for inflation or non-payroll. Our debt service is basically flat the next 2 years, so we don't have changes there really. So again, you know, if you ever want to really play around with all these variables, we could get into this and spend some hours. If I want to do that during a finance committee meeting or something, but we wanted to show this just to hone in on these major key variables and what can happen with these. And you can see that under this scenario, our unencumbered cash by end of 26, if we didn't do anything different than what we're showing, if all these assumptions were what actually came to pass, we would drop below our targeted unencumbered cash goal in 26. And by 27, you know, it's not pretty.
Ken,
Yeah.
on the, looking at OB3 on the expenditure budget.
Yes.
So the 3% salary increase equates to about a little over $1 million. So is it roughly $340,000 per percent? Is that
Yes.
essentially the
What
cost?
line are you on?
That's line
Oh,
3.
line 3.
Is
Yeah.
the salary equity adjustment, is that derivative of the salary increase, or is that a separate standalone number that we plan to use this year?
It's a standalone number. It's been derived by taking 0.5% of the salary. That's what we planned and what we've been able to achieve for 3, 4, 5 years.
That's the money that Shelley has used in the past to raise the minimum wage for our hourly employees and, you know, do some things like that.
Yeah, that's a great,
It's critical,
I
yeah, yeah.
completely agree. I just didn't know if we adjust the salary increase, that doesn't necessarily adjust the equity. Not that we couldn't do them separately, but they're set up separately.
Captain, you're taking how much percent?
Pardon me?
What percent are you taking from the salary increase for the salary equity adjustment?
Well, for 25 here, I'm not sure if it carries on or not. It's 0.5%. It came to like 162,000.
That's what it shows up here, is 100. And it's on top of, we don't take that away from the 3% salary increase, it's on top, that's in addition to that.
So I'm gonna see if I can get one other thing here.
Shelley, just roughly ballpark, about how many employees each year are affected by that equity increase?
Well, it,
And I know it changes, I'm sure, from year to year. I mean, we're talking about 100 employees, 200 employees, 75
last year
employees.
we did, whenever I adjust the base bottom, it moves, it slides the whole scale. So it affects a lot of people. So last year, we had saved up enough money to do a $2 increase per hour for the lowest paid hourly employee. So we went from $11 to $13. Okay. That was a big move. So I had to save money from the previous year that the budget gave me to carry over into the new year. So when I got that and I added it to that, I had enough money to do that increase. So I don't necessarily do it every year, but I plan for those big moves that are gonna really make the difference. And so that was one last year, we spent about $240,000 on making those moves. Most of it was in the hourly. There was probably about $30,000 of that had to go into the lower salary group, because we pushed the pay grade up. And so it just kind of depends. So overall, I would say it was probably, because it affects both full-time and part-time on staff and some of our salaried staff, it was probably around 180 employees maybe.
So using that example, sorry, I don't mean to take this down a rabbit hole. Using that example where you went from 11 to 13, if you had an employee that had been here for 5 years that was already at 13, did they also see a bump, or did it just compress the whole scale?
That's a great question. So in the past, we might not have been able to actually move people into the range. So what I did was I applied at 11, let's say you started today, you were at $11 an hour. I applied the $2 raise, that takes you to 13. Then I applied whatever raise there was, okay? So now I'm at, let's say it was 5%. So now I'm at 13.50, or 13.90. And then I said, okay, how long have you been here? If you've been here longer than this many years, I'm gonna bump you another 50 cents. So that you're not making the same as somebody coming in. So we applied more equity, and that's why it costs a little bit more to push people into that range. So people that were making $11 or $11.50 maybe are now making $14.50 because of all of those progressions. So I typically wait until I have a raise to help me boost them further. So I get them to the minimum, I boost them further, and then I see if I need to place them a little bit more into the range, and I have enough reserve to do that. That's a very good question.
So I do want to show you, this is the model here that we're just looking at. If we go up to the, well, what's showing up there now is on OB7. If we go in to where we have a 1 mil increase and make that 0, then this is what happens to the graph. And that's what shows up on OB8. I wanted to show you that change.
Could you go back and do that again?
Well,
Take it back down and then.
Just,
It's the
well,
next
look
page.
at
Oh,
OB7
it's the
and
next
OB8.
page.
yeah, this
They're right
is,
there on your.
Oh, good, thank you.
now this is what's on OB7 with the 1 mil. And then this designed to do is then show you what can happen if you take that mil away. And you can see this difference. So again, we think it's important to at least, this is not as sustainable. Even when you put that mill in, this is not sustainable. So there's going to have to be a lot of work done by the administration in conjunction with the board to not have this happen, because if this happens in 2017, we're on, and it won't get to 0 before we can't make payroll. So we have decisions to make. There are things that can happen if you decide that we don't want to fund a raise. I can go ahead and make the raise 0 for next year. You see, that helps our cash balance quite a bit. I only do that as an illustration to show there are things that can happen here to change it, but these items we're showing here are the most significant costs and revenues as far as looking at going forward, what's going to happen to our cash balances. That's pretty much what I have. I don't know, Ken, if you want.
No, I think I think this is a good illustration to let you know that it's also important, I think, and correct my numbers if I'm off here. In the current budget year that we're in, we showed you either last fall, $900,000 in reduction, correct? And we have another $400,000. So we've taken, we've taken, $1.3 million between last year and this year out of the budget. You'll see where we've removed positions, and have, trimmed in some places. We're like our own homes, our utilities are going up, our insurance is going up, all of those kinds of things that we don't have a lot of control over from a cost perspective. And Kent mentioned, to start off with, we've got unfunded deferred maintenance issues that will continue to need to be addressed. And it's just, we've gotten to the point with decisions that have been made where we've been able to take valuation increases and we've dropped the mill levy, that we're in a position where we have to come back to you now and ask for that ability to take the valuation increase and to increase a mill. So one of the other options is that you place these additional costs on the back of your students. And we've made a significant commitment to not increase tuition and fees significantly. The universities are all going up this year, and except for Emporia State. We have a commitment to try to keep our.
Emporia State got an extra $9 million.
They've gotten $9 million.
Didn't get $9 million last year.
They've gotten $18 million over the last 2 years. Yes, that's correct. And we want to continue to make our education accessible for our students. So it has to be a combination of approach to this. Every position that comes open, we look at it and assess whether it has to be filled on the academic side as folks retire or as other folks leave for whatever reason. Especially on the academic side, they're always assessing whether every one of those positions needs to be filled, or some of those dollars need to be moved into a department where there's growth and student enrollment increases and need additional support. Are there ways, instead of filling those full-time positions, that we can hire adjunct? Some areas, some departments, it's much easier to hire adjuncts than others. We can't hire adjuncts in chemistry and A&P and physics and things like that. Oftentimes you can find an adjunct that can teach in sociology or behavioral sciences or psych or something like that. So, I think it's really important for you to know that the deans, the VPs, the AVPs are constantly looking at these things and assessing the expenses and the potential opportunity to reduce those expenses.
So on OB2, line 2, out district tuition, we're not anticipating any drop in that. I think enrollment trends have been going down.
They have. We're seeing some positive things that are happening. Right now, our summer enrollment was up. Right, Jessica? Summer enrollment was ahead of goals. We've implemented, you folks have supported some initiatives for us that are helping at this point in time. We're still a ways off from fall enrollment. The trend increases, the trend shows that we typically have lost enrollment. But for right now, this is what we're projecting.
Is some of that offset by tuition increases to that group?
We didn't increase.
We didn't increase tuition anything.
Oh, we just
remember?
dropped.
We dropped the
Relatively,
dollar
we just
for the
dropped
industry.
We dropped the industry, that's right.
And we just kept everything the same.
I had a couple comments, if you had a second.
Sure, go ahead, Shelby.
I think as trustees, we also, like I said before, do need to look at expenses. And for example, we pay $300,000 to $500,000 of the foundation payroll. Our athletics loses about $2 million a year. Well over $1 million of that's football. At least have a discussion about it. I'm not trying to close sports down. But last year we gave $300,000 above what we owed to the city of Andover. We paid $750,000 for the culinary building when we could have leased it. And we've, as a board, we've been spending and spending without, much constraint. And at some point, it's going to bite us. So we might keep that in mind, that we need to watch what our expenses are as well. And just to circle back to the taxes, the reason Augusta has the NRP is because no one's going to build in Augusta because our tax burden's too high. So we have to incentivize them with the 10-year tax rebate to even have any building go on or even any remodeling going on, which does kind of state that our tax burden is too high at the county. And the same with the vehicle taxes, like people are at their limit, and then taking another $1 million from them is not going to be super helpful for as tight as things are currently. And even the state is like, hey, you guys are in a 3-year, 5-year average decline. We're going to cut your funds because you have fewer students. So I think what we should be doing personally as well is cutting our expenses.
This NRP has happened over time. I can't say that all the communities in Butler County have NRPs, but over time we've approved renewals on NRPs for lots and lots of the communities. And it's an incentive to build and rebuild in blighted areas or incentivize new building or renovations to building. That's kind of like what you talk about. Yeah, developments is kind of like what Linda talked about before. You're giving up those tax dollars for a period of time, but eventually those places come back on the tax rolls. And so on the front end,
I understand, but our growth in Butler County over 10 years has been 1.7%, which is not a growing county. We're not fostering an atmosphere of growth in our county. With the high tax burden doesn't help.
well, the tax burden comes from a lot of different entities, not just the college, and I'll continue to say that over and over again. It's the school districts, it's the cities, it's everything in combination, and the college contributes just to Butler County alone $49.4 million in economic impact. So there's definitely some economic incentive for the college to be in Butler County and helpful for that. So it's a combination of thinking about all of those things and talking about all of those. And and that's why we need to engage the board in these discussions. So when you're talking about cutting expenditures and things, we have to really understand the impact of those cuts. You talk about the cost of athletics, and it does cost us, but what's the value and the benefit that athletics brings as well? 400 student athletes, 350, 400 student athletes that fill the residence halls, that take full loads, that bring friends with them, that create a tradition here and actual donor support to the athletic program every year. But then there's also intangible kinds of things that come with athletic programs. And so you could look at it as a lost leader to a certain extent. What would this college be like if we didn't have athletics, and what kinds of opportunities would we be taking away from our students? You look at loss of other enrollment, class sizes that would diminish or be off the schedule, employees that wouldn't be employed any longer because we don't need them. So you have to look at the picture holistic if you're going to talk about the cost of athletics or the cost of nursing or something like that, and see what benefits are also derived, or if there are benefits derived in maintaining those programs and supporting them.
Right. That would be my point exactly. It's like I'm all for local athletes, whereas the football is imbalanced on the term of local athletes, and the majority of our losses are in that department. So it would be nice to have at least have the conversation to say, this are the total expenses related to football. If we didn't have it, Wichita State in 80 whatever chose not to. They've survived well. They're thriving well without football. It'd be nice to at least have a conversation. I'm sure there's no will to get rid of it. But like you said, it would be a good conversation to have.
Wichita State's case was very different.
Okay, other comments? Kim, do you have anything, a question or remark?
No.
Thank you, Ken, you've done a great job.
Thanks, Ken.
Karen?
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Dave?
Nope.
Actually, can I go back and ask one?
Oh, no.
Okay. So are we, I mean, playing off of Kent's slide here, what is the administration's process? Are we looking at each year in isolation, or are you already keeping in mind of, we're gonna have, I mean, it sounds like you guys have done a great job of finding places to cut this year, and we're gonna have to do just as much, if not more, next year, and we're still gonna be faced with the board being asked to increase taxes again, despite all the work that you all are doing. Is it, how to call it that, is that a sustainable process for administration to be able to keep? I mean, at some point, it seems like we're gonna reach a point where one side isn't gonna be able to keep giving, where, and it's gonna, the taxpayers are gonna be the one place where we know we can always go there. Not that anybody wants to, but that's the switch that isn't encumbered, so to speak.
Well, it's just that, it's that continuing conversation about how you balance all of those things. You know, you can't, I guess, Kent's been around and, you know, faced with state funding for lots of years. I mean, even in the years that I've been in Kansas, the past few years has been the most state funding and state funding support that the community college system has gotten. But, you know, there aren't any guarantees along that line. Again, you know, we can continue to charge our students more and more and more money, but that prices them out of an education as well. And, you know, worried about going back to the taxpayers and saying we need more and more money too. So it's a balance of, you know, looking at the expenditures and the revenues and, you know, cutting where we can, knowing that insurance is gonna continue to go up, utilities are gonna go up. We've gotta continue to support our staff and pay them, you know, an increase because all of their expenses are going up as well. You know, you can't go multiple years without paying your employees, giving your employees additional funding, so that they can, earn a, sustainable wage and living wage. So it's complicated.
I think one example that we saw, Kent showed us at one point, if in the last few years that we had just taken the assessed valuation increase, not change our mill levy, we would have had another, I think, $5 million.
True, I don't recall exactly.
I think that's the number, but, you know, the idea, and we've talked so much, when you say this, we talk about sustainability, which is what you're asking. That's an example of sustainability, and so, you know, we cut expenses, we could go away from increasing taxes anymore, but then we have to increase our enrollment. So, I mean, it's gotta be a combination that we're working at diligently with all those things. And then, one of the things I know last year, just, you know, you just kind of start figuring things out. When you want to say, yeah, is this something we have budgeted, or is this something that's, you know, within our budget dollars, or is this something new? Because we're gonna have to start looking at the something news and plan them instead of maybe approve them all the time. So it's lots of things, but we do need to get to a sense of sustainability. And if we continue to do what we've done, we will get to the place where we have to raise the mill levy drastically at some point. I've seen it happen in the municipality I was working with, and it was sad. So you think things are going along okay, but you know, year X comes and all of a sudden you need 5 mils, and that's a big hit.
We've seen that happen in cities right after the past.
The other thing, is, I could just, because I think it piggybacks on what you're saying. You can do more cuts, but at some point, the cuts start to affect the quality of the institution, and I think that's one thing that the administrative team has been sensitive to, is trying to maintain the quality and the identity of the institution.
Yeah, I did. That, the last time we talked about the average home valuation in Butler County, it seemed like that information was maybe 2021. Has there been an updated, anybody know?
Well,
I think what I
I can
have is
send that out
2022.
again. value, the median value that we use, Shelby got a different number from the county. And I think we sent it out, but I can send it out again.
Yeah,
It
I
had a
think-
different number, but mine came off of the website as well. I corrected that and I think I sent it all to you guys. I took mine off of the county website as well. And so
And-
I can send that to you.
Any, like, close to, what did you do? Can you estimate what that number was?
I think that the information that I gave you was a median house price of like 122,000 or 125 or something like that. Median assessed valuation of a home in Butler County.
And so a mill impacts that homeowner by how much?
I think it was like
I-
$15.
I don't know those numbers. I'm afraid to say right off the top of
15
my
a
head, but
month?
I've got them.
No.
Year.
15 years.
Yeah, we should do the chart for
Yes.
the 100, 152, 250, just so,
Yeah, we can do
because
that.
that's the majority of all
I,
homes.
I think,
There's stuff above 250.
and if I remember right, I think Shelby, I think some of his information was average price around 178,000.
That's what I wanna say, I think we're more like 174.
And-
Well, there's a
and-
difference between median and
Yes.
average.
Right.
Depends
Yes.
on how
Right.
you're
Yes.
defining that
Right.
statistically, so.
Can you do commercial or residential? I'm sorry.
Residential and commercial, actually.
And have you seen similar numbers to what?
I think that 170 something would be far more in line with what is typical.
And then what about commercial? What have you seen increases in that?
Commercial just mainly stayed flat. I mean, there are certain pockets that, you know, like Augusta's put a lot of effort into their downtown, and we've seen some uptick in some of the buildings down there, and, you know, but by and large, unless you get a credit tenant, some, you know, like the car wash that was just built in Augusta, that's just not typical, but, you know, they're gonna come in and they're gonna look at traffic counts, they're gonna do their thing. That's not your mom and pop, you know, whatever, locally owned businesses. Locally owned businesses struggle big time because the taxes and utilities are at a different rate than the residential. It's very hard to grow. The thing that I've seen recently that's kind of alarming, and it's like this chicken and egg thing, I don't know what to do. Like, I have some business partners, we're gonna try to launch a rural subdivision down by Rosedale. Hopefully, we get our final approval with Board of County Commissioners tomorrow. But the county governing bodies are actively trying to put in like new development regulations countywide that will drastically restrict zoning because, or subdivision, because they can't handle the amount of people that want to come here. It's such a big picture problem, and like I said, chicken and egg thing, I don't know what you do, because there's demand to build in Butler County, but Rural Water District 5, for instance, has a territory that's massive. It's most of what would be developable in Butler County and goes into Cedar County. And they don't have enough meters to service, you know, the demand, so they're talking about putting surcharges on subdivisions, and which makes it cost prohibitive. And then if you get more than quarter or half mile down a dirt road, they want you to pave it. Well, you know, so pretty soon a 5 acre tract is a $200,000 thing. Well, that works right outside of Andover, but that doesn't work literally anywhere else. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a long diatribe, but it's like, this county has so much potential to grow, but it just can't get out of its own way to do it, and I don't know what the answer is.
I don't think anybody does.
No, obviously.
Well, and anytime you grow, you have to think about the infrastructure of water, electricity, all of those utilities, and they have to be able to grow too.
That's the problem with Augusta. We physically can't grow in any direction but north because of the rivers. And we can't get an infrastructure up north, you know, like we can't afford to add that on there. And the infrastructure in the old part of town is failing. So then the population just stays stagnant, and then the fees, you know, the taxes and everything just keep going up and up and up. Which is why, you know, you say only $15 or whatever, but in Augusta in particular, you keep tacking that on from every direction, and they see very little benefit as a community from this institution. It gets, you know, it's frustrating.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Shelby real quick. That value from the county was 197,000, and it excluded agriculture, multifamily dwellings, apartments, stuff like that. So that was that number.
Well, agriculture is at a,
Shelby, was that medium or average?
Median, which to me does seem high, yeah, but that's what the county gave me.
And I took mine from
That's
tax website, from the Butler County tax
That,
website.
that was from Deborah Studebaker at the appraiser's office. And one thing too, at some point, our customers have to pay for our product, and our product has to bring the value that it requires. The customers will be willing to pay it. We've got to keep that in mind too.
well, I do know they're building new houses in El Dorado.
One of the things you have to take into consideration is, we talked about that infrastructure. A county doesn't have a water system, it doesn't have a sewer system, you've got to go to the cities.
Right.
If the city's gonna provide that, then they wanna annex, but if they annex, then they have fire protection, the police protection. You know, it goes beyond just being able to get a water or sewer line or electric or gas to that. And again, when in the past you saw subdivisions go on the outside of a community, almost always their sewer or their water system fail somehow. Now, if they get on rural water district, that's one thing, but then the sewer systems fail. They have to, they have a community lagoon for 100 houses, and it doesn't. So it makes it even more of a challenge, because as I said, then you've got the fire, the police, the emergency services. It's hard.
I think the thing that we as an institution that needs to be considered is, the example I go back to is Blockbuster Video. They were everything until they were nothing. And I think the biggest mistake we can make is to sit here and say, we want to maintain this institution the way it's always been. We may have to get creative. We may need to start offering classes at different times, be more appealing to non-traditional students, do more online stuff, trim down, I don't know, just right size certain things. I know Shelby threw out football, and that's a huge hot topic, but maybe it's not even the thing that you touch, but there's got to be something. It can't always be, well, we can raise taxes, or our enrollment moves up by whatever. It's like, what do we have to do? We have to think outside the box, and if we've got 10 years of stagnant and or decline, then we're not adjusting to the new world. We're not adjusting to the way things are today. This is not 1992, So that's, I don't have the answer to that. I'm schooled, but that's,
Well, I think it's easy, I think it's easy to think, at the level that you folks sit. I certainly know operationally and internally, there are lots of changes that have taken place. There's lots of changes in innovation and degree programs and the way that we deliver classes and when we deliver classes. You folks have been supportive, for example, of the Ad Astra software purchase that tells us, and will continue to tell us more and more over time, class scheduling and seat capacities and when classes need to be canceled and when other sections need to be offered and in what locations. All of those things are things that happen operationally, but that's not the world that you folks live in. So, ask us those questions, let us present that information to you and let you know what we're doing, because we're not just sitting here, waiting for things to happen. I've got folks sitting around the executive council level that have hundreds of years of experience just at Butler in their leadership roles, and they know what they're doing. They know their jobs really, really well, and constantly looking at how we need to change and flex and do things differently. So ask us those questions and let us present that information to you, and so that you can be, feel like you are better informed, or that you have the ideas of the things that we're doing.
Okay, my little list says July meeting. Potentially the MOU with faculty on insurance that we talked about today. We're gonna do some follow-up still with the Abermenian home value, but let's give an example of tax increase. What does a mill or 2 mills impact on residential on $150,000 house? We go on up.
How about if we email that to you, prepare an email, can you do that?
So then also in July, we're going to be presented with an opportunity to sign a letter about yes or no to net revenue neutral, not in both cases, but either proceed with not revenue neutral or proceed with revenue neutral. And I don't have anything else when we looked from last month. There was a list from last month too.
You'll have athletic insurance approval, that will be on the agenda. You'll need to have an exec session for discussion and negotiations, and presidential search if you want part of the time for that. We have, Jennifer, help me remember. Can you think of some of the other things we talked about?
There's a long list.
We talk about them all the time at VPs and kind of keep a running list and stuff. You'll have, typically on the July agenda, you also have the, kind of the annual things you do about, approval that Butler County Times Gazette is your designated newspaper, that you approve the designated bank accounts, legal counsel, those things happen in July every year. If you want to do your annual board evaluation, you can go through that, and review that and then distribute it out for you, for you guys to do your annual board evaluation. I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's happened sometimes in July or August.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else anyone's wanting?
Just as long as you keep us updated about Jennifer and the baby. Think we'll see ya?
That's why Kim Jackson is here.
I know.
Kim's gonna
I
help.
know, Kim, you're gonna be
Yep.
great.
Yep.
We have more babies. We have
Jennifer.
babies in accounting and babies in HR that are coming up.
Yeah. We have lots of babies.
Wonderful. Love the babies.
We know where to find Jennifer. She keeps saying, if you need some help, just call me. And I'm like, no. I mean, if we're really desperate, we'll get a hold of her.
They'll call when they want to babysit a little bit.
I'll let them, I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shelby.
Off to singing.
Off to see you.
Yep.
There you go.
We're having
a lot done.